I'm going to be talking to you about your professional promise and the fact that the highest paid professionals are high paid professionals because they have a high value promise. And so we're going to be looking at your promise and how you can get paid like a professional based on the promise that you are allowing yourself to make. But before we do that, I want to introduce you to this guy. His name is John Wanamaker, ran a store called Wanamakers, and he became known as one of the users, progenitors, and advocates for the price tag. Prior to John Wanamaker, and truthfully, some of the Quakers that were also in his area at the time in Philadelphia, prior to that, if you wanted to buy something, say oats or sugar or a horse, it was 100% negotiable. The price was determined by what somebody was willing to pay for it. And sometimes it was high for this person and low for the next person. It just didn't have a consistency. John Wanamaker believed that if we are all equal in the eyes of God, then we should all be equal in the eyes of price. And so he was the first person to put it out there and to make it popular and basically say the price is the price. Now, what happened in the world of retail is everything got easy. There was this whole part of the process that was cut out. It was something that was a difficulty, because if somebody was going to buy something, we're going to have to, what's it worth? What will you give me? Then we talk, and then we haggle, and then there's this process that was there. And for some people, it's like, yeah, it's too much. They even had haggling school for store clerks, which took a lot of time for them to get into and get through and get good at. But the whole goal is like, hey, we're in business for a profit. We've got to be able to make a profit. So you've got to be good at pushing the price up and getting the most value out of this. And the price tag eliminated all of this, all the training, all of the time, all of the effort, all of the energy, and it simplified something. And it gave people access to say, if I want this thing, I know it's this price, and I can choose to pay it or choose to not pay it. When we were traveling in Mexico, it took us maybe a week to notice that we got different prices than the locals. And we called it the gringo tax because we are obviously Americans. They charged us a different price because they could. And guess what? We paid it. Partly because we weren't equipped to be these hagglers. It's interesting how when you're not deciding what to pay, you also don't necessarily get to decide on the value. You just accept the value that someone else gave to you about an object. And we paid it. We paid it. But one of the things that I realized is like, this kind of makes us lazy in that we abdicate our responsibility to assign value to things, including our self. So I'm going to put that thought out there, and we're going to be talking about how you can assign value to a promise that you're going to make to the people that you are here on earth to serve. To do that, let's take a quick review. Jeez. Your value is attached to the permission that you've taken. I've taken permission that I don't have to be what someone else told me I have to be. I don't have to do what someone else told me I have to do. I'm going to do this thing the way that I see fit. It's permission. It's your personality. To know who you are and to not violate who you are, to give someone else what they want or what they say they need from you, it's a key. It's a key in stepping into being the professional. Your power, knowing that you have the power to create, the power to do, the power to give, the power to fulfill the promise you made. Now, of course, these last three, I think, are more critical to knowing the promise that you were designed for. It's your people. We've talked about how to know who your people are. Who are the people you're here to serve? What compels you? What is their problem? What is their problem? What is the puzzle they're trying to solve? How can you assist? And what is your process? Now, from all of that, you get to choose what you will promise. And your promise is based on what it is that you want to bring to the table. Before we go into this, yes, promises go in all multiple directions, right? There's the promise that you make to yourself. By the way, most people don't understand this. They're too busy keeping promises to them or to other people. How could they dare keep a promise to themselves? Well, that goes back to permission. But you have to keep promises to yourself. Then to God. How do you keep promises to God? Then there is your people. And your people are the ones that you live with in your home, the people that are closest to you, the ones that you don't want to let down, the ones you fight for, live for, dream for, and do for. And then beyond that, there's your professional people. And we're making promises. All of us, we've grown up making promises. And sometimes, by the way, we've made promises based off of past abilities, past circumstances. And the reality is that we can't possibly keep every promise that we've always made. What we're going to do is we're going to focus in on removing competing promises, because in order to say that I promise that I can do this thing, if this is true, there must be some other things that are not. If this is present, there must be other things that are not. And if I'm saying yes to one thing, I'm saying no to a host of others. Having the freedom of a promise not only gives you value, it determines where your time, effort, and energy should go. As a matter of fact, when I go into a company and we're trying to bring organizational structure to people, we will typically, one of the things that I will ask is, what's the promise of your organization? Well, I don't know. Well, let's talk about who are your people. They're these people. What's your promise? Well, we can do this for those people. Great. Is that what you want to promise, or that's just something you can do? No, this is what we want to do. Okay, that's our promise. Great. Within the organization, you're the leader. What's the main promise you have to keep for the company's promise to be true? And then you're the assistant, and you're the marketing director, and you're the sales manager. And what's the promise that you have to keep in order for us to keep the promise to our end client? So do you see how a promise determines the flow of your direction, the flow of your energy, and the flow of your attention? There was a study that's interesting, by the way. Why is that? Why does that matter? Well, I can tell you that there will be multiple times where you may or may not feel engaged or inclined to do what you're doing. And a promise is something that gives you access to something that just makes it easier to do the thing that you profess. There was a study done in the 70s. It was called the beach blanket study. And in the beach blanket study, they would, you probably read about it or heard about it. They would have a pretend couple roll out their beach blanket and put a radio out there and then walk away. Then a thief would show up, swipe their radio, and run away. They wanted to see how many people would help them. It was about 15%. 15% of the time, the people that were around this innocent couple would stop the thief. Then they did something else. They had another group, and same thing. They would roll out the beach blanket, place the radio, and then the pretend couple would ask people next to them, hey, can you keep an eye on our stuff for us? Yeah, no problem. Then they would go off somewhere. The pretend thief would come to take their stuff, snatch it, and run off And guess what happened? More than 90% of the time, people stopped the thief, sometimes even injuring the test participant. Why? Because we internally know there's something inside of us that's like an internal compass. We want to keep our word. Our word, if we are looking at the most maximum version of our word, it is our promise. But there are promises you've made that actually lower your value. And as a matter of fact, there are promises you've made and I've made that keep us, they compete against the real promise that we should be making. And so let's look at some of those things. The promise matters. The promise, it matters. Let's see. A few types of promises, by the way. Number one is I want to talk about your shadow promises. We're going to talk about competing promises, and then we'll talk about your value promises. Because in order to get into your value promises, we have to sometimes pull away some of these other commitments and promises we've made. Sometimes we'll have to destroy them completely. Sometimes we'll just have to renegotiate them. The hardest promises to break are identity promises. And I mean, not sometimes your prime desired identity, but it could be the one that, just the one you grow up with. So if you are a companion or an everyman, you may have somewhere deep inside promise that you're always going to be nice. If you are a fighter hero or a ruler, you may have this promise that you're always going to be the best. If you are the sage or the shaman, you may have determined you're always going to know more and protect others through knowledge. If you are the companion, you may have already pre-decided that there's a promise that's, I am always going to defer and give others the best. Do you understand? There are things that come in as a part of our identity that I wouldn't even call it a promise. I would call it a program. And what I would ask you to do is to take it and actually evaluate that. And ask yourself, is this benefiting me? How do you know if it's benefiting you? But this is who I am. This is my code. No. This is a program you can opt in or opt out of. Can you imagine still using Windows 7? Some of y'all still are. That's probably why I'm glitching sometimes. No. We move on and we utilize the programs that are most beneficial. Well, but isn't that selfish? Not necessarily. Not necessarily, because if it has to do with who you are and what you want, well, that's a part of the way that God communicates with you to move you on earth. If it's a part of your power and the people that you want to help, well, that means that you're going to be optimized to do this thing. If it is connected with your people, your problem, and your process, well, now you are going to feel alive and excited when you're doing it. And my friend, that is exactly what professional design is about. Being alive while doing the work that you love doing for the people who need it. And sometimes we carry commitments from other people, from other groups that we don't belong to, other people we're not a part of. Sometimes that came from trauma. At that moment, I decided I would never trust another person. Or at that moment, I decided I would always, fight to the end. And so some of those things were promises we made to ourselves a long time ago that are stopping you right now. And whoever you are, if you, like even looking at the material part of this is we say, well, what's the promise? And we give, by the way, we have some phenomenal ways to give you some power of the promises that you connect with professionally. But before you ever do anything professionally, you have to create promises personally. If you're not keeping your promises personally, when you're talking to people professionally, it seeps in. They won't believe you because somewhere you don't believe yourself. So, what are those things that you agree with yourself about? What are the things? What's the way you do things? What's the why that you do things? That's important to know. Are you keeping promises to your kids? Or are you making them and then breaking them? What about your spouse? So, fun, interesting things that we have to look at in order to get to the place to where we're going. I'm going to give you a few things about promises that I believe make it completely relevant and give you value. But before we get to the good ones, we have to pull the weeds out of the other ones. It could be from your personality, it could be from your past, it could be from trauma. It could have worked once upon a time, but we have to be able to move forward into what is optimized from today. I believe this. You want to keep your promises simple, small, minimal, not of necessity, and from cheer. There was for those of you who like the Bible, I like the Bible. There's a place in Corinthians, Paul was writing to this group of people, and he was writing to them saying, "Hey, listen, I know a lot of people are telling you you have to give more than you can. I know that some people are trying to make you feel guilty. They're trying to push you into doing something. But let me tell you this: let no man give out of compulsion or out of need, but let everyone give as he purposes in his heart, for the Lord loves a cheerful giver." And whether you believe that as a life principle or not, I do. But whether you do or not, there's something to be said about finding the snap of the moment of the thing that you can give, the thing that you can do cheerfully. What can you do cheerfully? What are the things that you're doing begrudgingly? What do you do because you need something? Promises made out of need, I'm not going to say they're bad, but they can be manipulative. Case in point, there was somebody that I decided to give away service to, and I was doing it, I thought, to be a good neighbor, to be a good guy. But the truth was, is I wanted favor from them sometime in the future. No problem with that. It would have been really good for me to say, "Hey, I'm doing this because I think somewhere in the future you can help me." That would have been fine. But what I was telling myself is I'm doing this because I'm the good guy. And when they didn't reciprocate, I got all mad. The deal was I was giving something, not because it's what I wanted to promise, not because it was from a cheerful heart, but because I needed something from them. And it changes the flavor. So is your need changing the flavor of your deed? Gosh, I should be a black pastor for sure. That'll be my next job. Keep them simple. Keep them minimal. Do not do it out of necessity or need, but do it from cheer. And I know, by the way, I will say, if you're in the place of it feels desperate, get out of your desperate energy before you make the promise, before you do the thing. Or else you'll find that you've said yes to something you wish you hadn't said yes to. Here's the big question for the professional promises you should be making. In what area or areas can you be the best in the world? Not adequate, not as good as other people, not even great. For all of us, there are only a couple of spaces where we have the capacity to actually become the best in the world. When you are the best in the world, is there a price tag? When you are the best in the world, who gets to determine value or price? You do. When you are the best in the world, it is the consummate professional. What's a professional? A professional is someone who's great at what they're doing. They get paid for what they're doing. What they're doing is what they're professing. It's what they speak. It's what they believe. They are professors, which means they're intelligent and bright and studied at what they do, and they practice what they do. This is a professor. And by the way, today, you are a professor just like I am. It's not a degree. It's a station in life, but you get to become a consummate professional, a true professor, when you are in pursuit of or having laid hold of being the best in the world at something. What can you become world class in? And I'll guarantee you, it's not being a repeat of someone else. In terms of where you came from and into your process, we imitate, then we innovate. If you are in your 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, you should be innovating. You should be taking things that you've learned from other masters and putting your own spin on it. Your promise involves productivity, but also involves creativity in service of your people. But that's the question. This is the one that I think determines your ultimate trajectory, your ultimate direction, you putting things into play and getting paid more than you thought possible is to question in what areas can you be the best in the world. Really, this is the opposite of the John Wanamaker. We're going to get into some similarities, some things. But I believe this, and back to the competing promises. Sometimes the thing that actually stops you from being world class is the weight of work undone. It's the thing that makes you stressful at night. It's the thing that makes you say, oh my God, I forgot this. It is the weight of work undone. What is work undone? It's a promise made that you didn't keep. So keep your promises to a minimal, right? Make your promises easy to keep. Keep them to a minimal. If you have things that are competing against your current promises, this is what I would ask you to do today. Go back and either renegotiate them. Hey, listen, I know, son, I told you I'd pick you up every day after school. I'm in a new phase with business, and I'm going to be picking you up on Mondays and Fridays. You have to stay at aftercare Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Renegotiate. It's okay. Use the intelligence of today to create the promise of today. Do not make promises today based on conditions of yesterday. Make sense? This will keep you from the weight of work undone. How do we know the best promise to keep? I believe it's this. Like, if you want to find the promise you should be keeping to people, like, look, what need do people have that compels you? And what can you guarantee? What do you know you can do about that need? In that space is your value. The goal is when you know your people, when you look at the people who compel you, find a need that you can perform at a high value. Find a need that they have the highest value for, and you will be paid the higher value. We're not talking about dollars per hour. We're not talking about salary. We go beyond that when we know that we can meet a need that is a high level pain. When we solve a high level pain, we have high level value. We do. So here is the phrase that I want you to do, and anyone who's familiar with any of my past work, I call this your power statement. It's very simple. Now, if you're not in sales and you're doing this thing in the School of Professional Design, you're like, but I'm not in sales. Listen, yes, you are. If you want to get paid for anything, at some point you need to know this. You need to have this. You need to grip this, and it needs to be your promise. And this is a promise to you and to yourself and to other people. Professionally, ready? Do you know these people? What people? Do you know people with car problems? Okay. Do you know married couples who are in debt? Okay. Do you know men over 50 who are struggling with belly fat? Do you know entrepreneurs who just have too much going on? Do you know people in mortgage who are trying to make more relationships? Do you know, right? Do you know these people? So you know the identity of your people. We talked about your people. Do you know those people? I do blank for blank. Well, what do you do? I do weight loss clinics for men over 50. This is simplified, and this is acceptable. If you can at least identify the people and what you do for them, you're ahead of 90% of the world. But that's not where we stop. Oh no, because we are, this is a school of professional design, baby. I'm going to give you an example, and I plug some of my info in because I still do coaching with people, but let me show you this. I want you to go from being the person that does this to becoming the guy or the best in the world or the person, like the guy, the gal, the person. I am the guy for blank who want blank way. Don't look at the stuff on the bottom here yet. I am the guy. I am the best person for people. I'm the best person for home sellers who are motivated and want to find cash deals. I am the best trainer. I am the trainer for men who are in their 50s struggling with belly weight. I am the loan originator for real estate partners who want people to help them with business practices. I am the person for this person who wants it in this way. So you have to know what your people want. Here's my example below. So I am the best coach, and I crossed out for people, for for purpose-driven leaders. I am the best coach for purpose-driven leaders who want, and I had one phrase, and I left it there because I wanted you to see that you should have multiple iterations. I'm the best coach for purpose-driven leaders who want the most profit the simplest way possible. Like, I can say that and know it. If you're not purpose-driven, I'm not for you. If you don't want it to be simple, I'm not for you. If you're not trying to grow, I'm not for you. So those are some of my components. What are the things, like, for you to go from being like, I do this, to being, I'm the best person for the people who want this and this way? It's interesting how when you say something like that, it's a profession. A profession is a promise, isn't it? And when you profess something, sound like you believe it. If you don't believe it yet, say it till you do. If you still don't believe it, maybe change it, because if you don't believe yourself, it's not believable. Come up with something that you can believe. And that's a part of what it means to be a functioning from your professional design. When you know your promise, I would ask you a couple of questions. The first is this: in order for this to be true, what has to not be true? Right? So who are you? If you're for this certain people, who are you not for? If you're for a certain problem, which problem are you not for? So in the promise, you'll notice that there is a in front of us. And because we're doing everything, we're like the knife that cuts everything, we become dull. We're not sharp for the main thing. In your professional design, in my professional design, it's a calling. By the way, did you know the word vocation comes from the word voca, voco, vocal? A vocation is a calling. How can you find your calling in what you do? To me, it is you being connected to the promise you make, to the people you were made for, in a way that's consummate with your power, and your professional income is directly proportionate to the most valuable process that you can make in alignment with those things. And my request of you is to get alone and get serious and maybe even ask yourself, what promises have I been making? What promises am I making that are driving me nuts? What do I wish I didn't have to do? What do I wish I could do? Find those areas. You're going to find some feelings. Some of them aren't going to be pleasant feelings. But in that, you're going to find something that sparks and makes you come alive. I was talking to a friend recently, and he mentioned something that he's like, I don't know how I know, I just know. But he used a word called self-evident. And to me, when you're doing the thing you were made to do and the way that you were made to do it, and you know that you can promise that you can do that again, there's a confidence that stands up, stands out, and it commands and demands value. You are valuable. Stop making promises that don't matter and start making promises connected with your design to your people that are high value. And talk to me later when your income is in places you couldn't believe.